Okay, hang on. This is actually a little crooked. Yeah, good enough. I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional, so I'm not going to hold myself to professional standards. Okay, so I haven't done one of these in a while. I have had difficult. This is May 8th. No, wait, no, May 10th. This is May 10th. Whew, Monday. So Mother's Day was May 8th, Sunday. I haven't done one of these in like a week and a half. It's been difficult. I've had a lot to do I haven't had too many days where I've been home. I had one day when I was home, I was sick. Kind of had a weird little 6-hour illness. Last Tuesday, I think it was. And there have been a lot of days this last couple of weeks I haven't even been here, haven't had a chance to do this. Plus, I have had to prepare this lesson quite a bit. I've had to go over this material a few different times with a few different translations and commentaries and stuff to make sure I was in tip-top shape and ready to go. So it's taken a while to get around to this. Last set of videos I did, of course, by the time I actually post these online, it'll be months from now, and no one's going to care about my particular difficulties in the last couple of weeks. But last time I did a video, last video I did was about the book of Amos. I read the book of Amos. The next prophet book is going to be Hosea. But that's not today. Today we're going to read a few more chapters out of the history books in order to clear the next section of history, as well as prepare the context for Hosea, who I'm going to read after this, and then Micah, and then Isaiah, one of the big ones. Not today, though. Today we're going to be reading the history books. We're going to be in the books of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, like we have been for quite a while now. Plus, we're actually going to take a detour and read a couple chapters out of Isaiah in today's readings. Kind of like a sneak peek of the book of Isaiah. Because there's a lot of context we have to set. There's a lot going on in this material. The part of history that this section covers, 2 Kings 15, 16, 17, and 2 Chronicles 27 and 28, and Isaiah 7 and 8. That's the material. That's the chapters we're going to be reading today. And there's a lot going on during this time. Okay, a lot of turmoil, a lot of instability, a lot of wheelings and dealings amongst the nations, a lot of comings and goings, a lot of invasions, a lot of incursions, a lot of activity. We have covered the first half of the 8th century, 700s BC. We covered that pretty briefly. If you remember, before we read Amos, we read about King Jeroboam II of Israel. And he reigned for 41 years. And he was the most powerful and prosperous of the northern kings. And it was during his day that Jonah ministered, during his day that Amos had his ministry as a prophet. We read about that. We talked about that. We read the book of Amos. But for the most part, we don't cover the reign of Jeroboam in great detail. And it was a long reign. It was a very prosperous reign. We kind of skipped the first half of the 8th century, the 700s BC, very briefly. But the second half of the century, the second half of the 700s BC, is very active, and we're going to be covering a lot of stuff that goes on during this time. Now, you remember Jeroboam was of the line of Jehu, however you pronounce his name, the dynasty that overthrew Ahab's son, the dynasty of Ahab. Ahab actually was the son of Omri. And so that dynasty was overthrown by Jehu, whose dynasty continued on through Jeroboam, the most powerful of all the northern kings. And it was during that long period of power and prosperity that Israel was very at peace again. And Uzziah was the king in the south, and he was a powerful king, and he reigned even longer than Jeroboam did. He had a 52-year-long reign. So he was around even longer than Jeroboam was, and he was powerful and prosperous, and for the most part God-fearing. So God gave him success in most of what he did, for at least a good chunk of his time. So for 50 years or so, from 800 to 750 BC or thereabouts, Israel has been very prosperous and peaceful. It's not going to stay that. So when Amos, for example, comes along and speaks to those people, he's speaking to people who are at peace and have a lot of material goods, a lot of wealth and possessions that they've accumulated, sometimes unfairly, in fact, much of the time unfairly. And they do not see anything wrong. They do not see any problems. They have a powerful king. They have a secure borders. They have peace. They have prosperity. They're doing the worship system. They have a worship system that they follow. It's not the one that God gave them. It's one they made up basically on their own. But they're doing it, and they think that because of this, they're honoring God, and that they're going to be, that they're prospering and being blessed by God. But there are deep problems underneath it, not very far underneath the surface. I mean, we got issues that run deep. And after Jeroboam dies, the kingdom is going to fall apart quickly. Jeroboam dies around 753 BC, and in about 30 years, the kingdom is going to be no more. About 30 years after their most prosperous king dies, most powerful king dies, they're going to cease to exist as a country. That's not a lot. And in that time, they're going to have 6 different kings come and go, most of whom will die violently in battle or in assassination. So, a period of tremendous instability and turbulence is coming up, and it's going to end with complete and utter destruction. So that long period of peace and prosperity they were enjoying earlier masked a lot of very deep problems that come to the surface very quickly. So we're going to start today in 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 8. Right before this, we had a few verses that talked about Azariah, or Uzziah, king of Judah. And we read about more about him in 2 Chronicles. And it was during his ministry, his kingship, that Amos ministered. We talked about the earthquake that happened in the days of Uzziah, which Amos uses to date his book. He ministered before the earthquake. He wrote the book after the earthquake. Dated the book by the earthquake, and apparently used the earthquake as confirmation of his message. That was Uzziah. He had a long reign, 52-year long reign. In our years, in our calendars, I believe the years go from 792 to 740 BC. And he's in the south, he's in Judah. So now we're backing up to the north to see what happens in the northern kingdom after Jeroboam II dies. And this is in the back half of the reign of Uzziah, or Azariah, down south in Judah. So, 2 Kings chapter 15, starting in verse 8. In the 38th year of Azariah, or Uzziah, king of Judah, he reigned for 52 years. So this is 14 years left to go in his own reign. Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 6 months. So he didn't get a 41-year-long reign like his father did. He only reigned 6 months. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, as his fathers had done. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit, which basically means he continued leading Israel in the path of idolatry. Remember, Jeroboam set up these golden calves, said that they were God, said that they were Yahweh, they're the one you need to worship, not Israel. And that was he did one in Bethel, which was in the south of his kingdom, and in Dan, which was in the north of his kingdom. And not only that, but he set up his own priesthood. He basically said anyone who wanted to be a priest could be a priest, pretty much. He set up his own feast days, his own religious calendar. He established his own entire worship system. And it was all in contrary to what God had actually told them that he wanted. And every king after him followed that same system. None of them ever corrected that mistake. So when the text says the king followed in the footsteps of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that's what they mean. They mean idolatry. They turned away and worshipped in a system that was not what God had set up. Shallum, son of Jabesh, conspired against Zechariah. He attacked him in front of the people, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. The other events of Zechariah's reign are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. So the word of the Lord spoken to Jehu was fulfilled. Your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. Now remember, Jehu was the guy who eliminated the house of Ahab, or house of Omri, the son of Ahab, the father of Ahab. He didn't actually kill Ahab, he killed his sons and a lot of his descendants. He was supposed to do that, he was told to do that. 2 Kings chapter 10, and he got rid of all the Baal priests as well. He killed Jezebel, and he got rid of all the Baal priests that she had brought into the kingdom. 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 28. So Jehu destroyed Baal worship in Israel. However, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit, the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. The Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in accomplishing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all I had in mind to do, your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. Yet Jehu was not careful to keep the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit. He could have had a lasting dynasty. As it was, he only had 4 generations. And that was Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam, and Zechariah. And now they're done. And thus ends the period of peace and prosperity that Israel had been enjoying until now, and begins their descent into oblivion. Continuing on, Shallum, son of Jabesh, became king in the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, and he reigned in Samaria 1 month. So he didn't last very long either. Then Menahem, son of Gadi, went from Tirzah up to Samaria. He attacked Shallum, son of Jabesh, in Samaria, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. So this Shallum guy is only here to get rid of Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, to replace the dynasty of Jehu. That's his only purpose. He fulfills that purpose, and then a month later he's eliminated too. The other events of Shallum's reign and the conspiracy he led are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. At that time, Menahem, starting out from Tirzah, attacked. Now remember, Tirzah had been their center of power before Omri. If we go back to 1 Kings and we read about the beginning of the northern kingdom, we'll find they actually had a power base in Tirzah before they moved the capital to Samaria. Omri was the one who moved the capital of Samaria. Went back a little too far there. Just as an example, First Kings chapter 15, verse 33. In the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, Baasha, son of Ahijah, became king of all Israel in Tirzah, and he reigned 24 years. In the next chapter, 1 Kings 16. In the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah, Omri became king of Israel, and he reigned 12 years, 6 of them in Tirzah. He bought the hill of Samaria from Shimmer for 2 talents of silver, and built a city on the hill, calling it Samaria, after Shimmer, the name of the former owner of the hill. So that was when Samaria became their capital. Before that, it had been Tirzah. So now this Menahem guy is returning the capital to Tirzah. It seems like it, at least. So he started out from Tirzah, attacked Tipshah and everyone in the city and its vicinity, because they refused to open their gates. In other words, they refused to acknowledge him as king. He sacked Tipshah and ripped open all the pregnant women. We have heard before about this tendency to rip open pregnant women. It seems to be something of a fad at this point in time. They're doing this a lot. And we're going to hear it again, too. This isn't the last time we're going to hear about ripping open pregnant women. This became something of a custom when you attack the city in these days. In the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, son of Gadi, became king of Israel. And he reigned in Samaria 10 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Well, we already read about one thing he did that was evil. That was attacking a city of his fellow Israelites and ripping open their pregnant women. So he can't be too good of a guy if he's going to do that. During his entire reign, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. Another one of those guys. Another one of those failures of a king. Then Pul, king of Assyria, invaded the land. So we are finally reading about the Assyrians. The Assyrians have been floating around on the edges for 100 plus years at this point. We're now in the year 743 BC. For more than 100 years, the Assyrians have been kind of floating around out there as a threat. The more immediate threat has been Israel's direct neighbor to the north, Aram. We've been reading a lot about their fights with Aram and Damascus and the kings of Aram, the Ben-Hadads, the Hadadezers, Hazael, who was around for a long time. That has been the immediate threat, but there's always been this other factor lying in wait on the other side of Aram, on the other side of the Euphrates River, is the kingdom of Assyria. And Assyria is a menace, and is going to become a menace. Now that's the nation that Jonah went to. That was about the year 800 or so BC. And he didn't like Assyria. At the time, they already didn't like Assyria. They didn't, Jonah didn't want to go to Assyria because he didn't, not because he was afraid of them, per se. He may have been afraid of them, but that wasn't the reason why he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go because he didn't want to give them an opportunity to repent and possibly escape judgment. He wanted them to be judged because Assyria already had such a bad reputation at that time. Nobody liked Assyria. And they went through a period of time in the 700s where they were kind of in their own trouble, and that's what allowed Israel, under the person of Jeroboam II, to become powerful again. We read about Elisha the prophet giving his dying proclamation about Jehoash. I think is it Jehoash or Jehoash? Jehoash defeating Aram a few times to reclaim some of their lost territory, and then Jeroboam inherited that and became a powerful king again. So Aram was subdued. Assyria was going through its own trouble, which is what allowed Israel to become powerful again for a few decades. But now Israel is going down on the toilet, and Assyria has gotten its act together again. They have a new king, this guy named Pul. We also know him as Tiglath-Pileser III. And Assyria has empire on its mind. They want to conquer lands and expand their empire to all the known world. And they're going to do it by force. They'll accept a bribe. Okay, we're going to read about Menahem giving this guy money to go away from him. They'll accept money, but they're perfectly fine with subduing you by force. They don't have any problems doing that. So the Assyrian, and this is the first time we've mentioned Assyria directly in the narrative. They've been around. In fact, we know from other extra-biblical records that Assyria has already fought Israel a few times. It hasn't been recorded yet in the pages of Scripture itself. But now the Assyrians have arrived, and they are not going to take no for an answer. So then Pul, king of Assyria, invaded the land, and Menahem gave him 1,000 talents of silver to gain his support and strengthen his own hold on the kingdom. So he bought him off, basically. He wasn't going to pick a fight with this guy. Menahem extracted this. That was a lot of money, by the way. We're talking about 1,000 talents of silver. So where did he get this from? Well, remember how Amos called out all those wealthy people in Israel? Menahem's going to take their money and pay this king of Assyria. Menahem extracted this money from Israel. Every wealthy man had to contribute 50 shekels of silver to be given to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria withdrew and stayed in the land no longer. So all that money that those wealthy Israelites had, Amos talks about them a lot. They were his primary audience that he was talking to and criticizing for all of their misdeeds. Was the wealthy elites, the landowners, the building owners, the people who owned all this stuff, had robbed their fellow countrymen to get it, and were living a life of luxury and wealth and materialism, while their countrymen were outside naked, lying down without any clothes on, We talked about how they were taking their cloaks as pledges and not giving them back, cheating them. These are those people. And now Menahem is taking their money to give it to the king of Assyria, that the king of Assyria won't come and peel all their skin off. Now, those Assyrians like to torture people. Okay, on their walls in the Assyrian capitals and the Assyrian castles, they painted reliefs or sculpted reliefs of impaling people on spikes, flailing their skin while they were still alive. They would put hooks. We read about this all even in Amos. They would put fish hooks in people's faces and drag them along behind them. As they were being pulled along by a hook they had stuck in their cheeks or on their chin. They would gouge out your eyes. These are some brutal. And they were brutal for the sake of being brutal. Okay, it wasn't just brutality in warfare. I mean, they were brutal for the sake of being brutal. It was psychological warfare. They introduced the idea of psychological warfare and empire building to the world. And they combined those things in a way that had not been done before. So they were a fearsome nation. Everybody hated Assyria. As for the other, so Menahem wants to buy them off. He does not want to pick a fight with these people because he knows that it's not going to go well for him. So he takes all the money from all these wealthy people that Amos had been pointing fingers at and gives it to Assyria. That's not going to last. Okay, Assyria they'll go away for now, but they're going to come back. As for the other events of Menahem's reign, all he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Menahem rested with his fathers, and Pekahiah his son succeeded him as king. So there's one guy, the last one, who doesn't get assassinated. We have had a couple of assassinations already. We're going to have more. But there's one time where we actually had a peaceful transfer of power from father to son here in the last days of Israel. In the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah. So he's still on the throne. So he's had this long 52-year-long reign now, and he's seen a lot of northern kings come and go. Now, he's in seclusion, but that was the guy who had the mark of uncleanness break out in his forehead, and so he's been living in seclusion for some time now. His son, Jotham, is actually effectively reigning as king, but he is still technically the senior monarch, and so we're still dating events by his reign, as long as he's alive still, and he is still alive. So he's seen all of this come and go in his own time, in his own lifetime. So in the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekahiah, son of Menahem, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 2 years. Pekahiah did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. One of his chief officers, Pekah, son of Remaliah. Now, this always confuses me, because you have a guy named Pekahiah and a guy named Pekah. Okay, and one succeeds the other. Pekah succeeds Pekahiah. It stands to reason to think that Pekah is a son of Pekahiah, but he is not. I always get this confused because I always want to think that those two are father and son, but they're not. Pekahiah and Pekah are not father and son. Pekahiah was the king before Pekah. Pekah does succeed Pekahiah, but not because he's his son, because he killed him. So one of Pekahiah's chief officers, Pekah, son of Remaliah, conspired against him. Taking 50 men of Gilead with him, he assassinated Pekahiah, along with Argob and Ariah, I guess 2 other chief guys in the court, I guess, in the citadel of the royal palace at Samaria. So they apparently put a palace back in Samaria. It seemed like Menahem based his strength of power in Tirzah, but I guess they moved back to Samaria eventually. So Pekah killed Pekahiah and succeeded him as king. The other events of Pekahiah's reign and all he did are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. Good luck finding that book. If you ever find it, let me know, because I'd like to read it. Hopefully someone can translate into English if you ever find it. It'd be nice to have. In the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, so he's still alive. This Azariah guy is still around. Pekah, son of Remaliah, became, this is his last year, by the way. He reigned for 52 years. This is his last year. But he is apparently still alive when this last transfer of power in the north takes place. In the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 20 years. Now, this is where the timeline gets extremely confusing. This is the last year of Uzziah, which we can date to 740 BC, or about that. Okay, there are different people who have different chronologies, but let's say 740 BC. 20 years from now is 720 BC, and the northern kingdom is going to be gone by then. The northern king, and we still have one more king to go after this guy, who reigns for 9 years. The northern kingdom is going to be gone and fall into captivity and be eliminated in 722 or 721 BC. So if Uzziah dies in 740 BC, if that's the beginning of Pekah, 52nd year, last year of Uzziah, if Pekah's reign starts then, he reigns for 20 years. And then there's another guy after him who reigns for 9 years. That takes us down way past the point where Israel has ceased to exist as a nation. So there is an issue somewhere in this chronology. There's a piece of information that we're not being told by the text. I'll talk about this as we go through these verses. But just keep in mind that this is one of the thorniest problems in all of the chronology of the Hebrew kings, is these last couple kings of the northern kingdom. There has to be a co-regency or a co-reign going on here that we're not told about. I talked before about the idea of, Azariah, here's a good example. Azariah, or Uzziah, has been king for 52 years, but he's been in seclusion now for some time. We read about in 2 Chronicles how he had the mark of uncleanness break out in his forehead, and he stayed that way until he died. So he was off in seclusion by himself in his own house, alone, for the last several years of his life. So his son Jotham, we even read about this back in chapter 15, verse 5. We'll just read the whole verse. The Lord afflicted the king, Uzziah, with leprosy, until the day he died, and he lived in a separate house in Judah. Jotham, the king's son, had charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. So Jotham is effectively the acting monarch. We'll read about Jotham here in a few verses. So there's a co-regency there, clearly a co-regency there. Okay, so with this Pekah guy, he can't be reigning 20 years entirely by himself. It's impossible. Time-wise, it's impossible. So there has to be some kind of a co-regency or something going on here that is not mentioned in the text. There's some information that just simply isn't there. Okay? That doesn't mean that the information of the 20 years is wrong. It could be that there's a scribal error, potentially. But the important thing to remember is that there's a piece of information here that we're not being told. There is some kind of a co-regency, or maybe even a split kingdom. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, and we're going to read about this as we kind of go on and look at some things going forward. It's not impossible that at this point the northern kingdom had broken down to such a degree that there were effectively two different kingdoms. Remember how there was that chunk of land on the east side of the Jordan River where the tribe of Reuben and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh settled, which wasn't technically part of the promised land. It wasn't technically part of the land that God had assigned them and had promised to Abraham, but he allowed them to have it anyway. Okay, there is a possibility. That's actually where Pekah is from. It's called Gilead. That's actually where Pekah is from. So there is a possibility that Pekah may have been in charge of like his own little branch of the kingdom east of the Jordan while Menahem and Pekahiah were still alive. It's possible. We don't really know this. Okay, we don't really know this, but that's a possibility. Something has to be there, though. There's a piece of information that we're not being told. The timeline doesn't work any other way. There's something is going on here that accounts for this 20-year reign of Pekah that the text the writers of the book, the Holy Spirit who inspired them, just did not see fit to include for whatever the reason. Anyway, so in the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 20 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. In the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abel Beth Makkah, Genoa, Kedesh, and Hazor. He took Gilead, that's the east side of the Jordan River, and Galilee, that's north, including all the land of Naphtali, and deported the people to Assyria. So that's a large portion of the northern kingdom, all the part east of the Jordan River, as well as a good chunk of the northern territory. So a large chunk of the northern kingdom is already gone. Naphtali is gone. The inside, all the land of Naphtali, all the stuff east of the Jordan is gone. So a good chunk of the kingdom has already fallen into captivity. Then Hoshea, son of Elah, conspired against Pekah, son of Remaliah. He attacked and assassinated him, and then succeeded him as king in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah. As for all the other events of Pekah's reign, all he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Hoshea, by the way, is going to be the last king of Israel. So we are now down to, we've already lost a good chunk of the land. And we are now down to the very last days of the northern kingdom.